Tulpas. Who doesn't love them? You do, I do, everyone does. Well, I guess some people don't. Now, I have a soft spot for tulpamancy, but I'll try to be as unbiased as possible. First, let me say this. Tulpamancy is the real deal. I've made one in the past. They do seem to be independent acting thought forms that can create tactile hallucinations. Another positive is that there's a wealth of knowledge out there that's easy to find, and different ways of creating them, so you can experiment to see what fits you best. They also have interesting concepts beyond tulpas, such as wonderlands, which are imaginary places that can be created like a tulpa. And the tulpamancy community genuinely seems interested in its actual subject matter. Unlike, say, witches versus the patriarchy, which is the biggest witch subreddit, and seems to have no interest in witchcraft at all. Not even exaggerating. Go there and look at the first 10 posts. I'd be shocked if even one was about doing actual witchcraft. Meanwhile, on the tulpa threads, the first thing you see is a researcher thanking them for an MRI study. As you can see, tulpamancers are more serious about what they do, but it's not all sunny skies and rainbows. There are shadow sides. Tulpamancy can make some people unhinged. In the place I used to live, there was a house shared by a group of Wiccans splitting the rent. I would play D&D with them, so I got to know them, and one of the guys became deranged after doing tulpamancy. When I first met him, he was kind of a classic neckbeard neat, not to be mean. His dream was to go to Japan, and after years of saving up, he finally went. But when he got back, he was depressed. I think he didn't want to leave, so to cope, he created a tulpa. Over the course of about 6 months, he became increasingly withdrawn. He would talk to himself, he'd pace back and forth, then suddenly stop and curse or laugh hysterically. He got really impulsive, claiming his tulpas were possessing him. He started acting like a 2-year-old, demanding things from people and flying into a rage if he didn't get what he wanted. That included coming to my apartment and demanding I give him money. His room looked like a tornado went through it. He stopped taking care of himself and refused any help. He basically became like one of those raving homeless people. In the end, they kicked him out because he refused to pay rent, and he went back to his parents' house and I never saw him again. Point is, if you use tulpas to completely avoid reality, you could become unhinged and make things worse. And there are unfortunately people who do that. Tulpas can enhance your experience, but they can't replace it. Now, as to my own experience with tulpamancy, I created one about 4 years ago in the form of an anime girl. Suit me, I'm a weeb. The way I made it was with isochronic beats plus affirmations while staring at an outline of a woman filled with static. I don't remember how long it took to create. I think about a week. After that, it acted independently and would give its opinion usually by holding a sign up like a cartoon. When I was almost asleep, it would create tactile hallucinations, and in dreams, we'd do stuff like go to theme parks together. These days, it mostly stays dormant since I don't want to be distracted. But one interesting thing I've noticed is that the tulpa seems to be able to interact with other entities. So if a ghost or an alien starts sneaking around, the tulpa will point it out, and if it's hostile, the tulpa will turn into a snarling wolf and try to fight it. Now, you can argue these visions are self-created delusions. Fair enough. I could see how a ghost or alien could be representations of subconscious processes or whatever, but at the direct, experiential level, it makes no difference. It feels like you're interacting with a being in the same way you would interact with a real person. Now, on to grading them. Is tulpamancy a deep and wise subject? Not really. I don't think a person who does tulpamancy is going to become like a Lao Tzu level sage, but it does encourage imagination and meditation indirectly, making it infinitely better than just passive consuming. Now, I understand a lot of people come into tulpamancy because they want to make a character from a TV show, but even then, the act of tulpamancy itself requires some focus and imagination regardless. And for a lot of these people, they wouldn't have done meditation or used their imagination as much otherwise. Does it have a long tradition and pedigree? Not really. The history of tulpas is kind of convoluted. Wikipedia claims that Tibetans invented them, but all the sources they use are just the author basically saying he heard it from someone else. I've actually asked Tibetan monks in real life, and none of them have heard of tulpas. Buddhists online deny they invented them. Tulpamancy community also denies they invented them. Kind of odd that no one wants to take ownership. So I did some digging. Theosophists invented it less than 100 years ago. That's not to discount the validity of tulpas. Theosophists spent more than 50 years refining the concept into what it is now. They didn't just cook it up in an afternoon like chemtrails. They put a lot of concentrated effort and practice into creating them. I think this notion that spiritual practices have to be ancient to have any validity is a fallacy. New spiritual practices can and should be invented, and tulpamancy is a good example of that. How do people behave who are into them? It depends. Overall, the online community is mostly friendly and helpful, and they don't get automatically hostile if you show any concerns like our socialism. In fact, they'll actually consider and talk about contravening points. But it can get cringe, by which I mean people purposely acting disruptive in public for attention, people aggressively demanding validation of their tulpa from friends, family, or even strangers, and just generally being inconsiderate of others. But again, there are worse communities out there. Does it improve the quality of your life? Yes, I think so. From the people I've talked to, it helped them with loneliness, depression, anxiety, etc. And a lot of them got into daily meditation, which I see as a plus. The more mindfulness, the better. But as I said before, it's not a way to solve all your problems, so leaning on it for everything will cause problems. But I still stand by the idea that it's better than most mindless escapism, although I admit there are far better spiritual practices one can do, which I'll get into one day. This is better than couch potato type consuming. Is it an interesting subject? Yes. It's something you can do fairly easily compared to advanced spiritual practices that produces the desired results. It has multiple in-depth methodologies methodologies for creating one, so you can pick and choose depending on your personality. So if you're a visual person, you do the one I did and look at static. If you're an analytical person, there are dry step-by-step instructions. If you're like an emotionally expressive person, there's binaural music, etc. And again, you can talk to others about it. I personally find the history fascinating concerning its development. I mean, I even made a video about it. I mean, it has a lot of interesting things about it. Does it get you closer to the highest goal? A tiny bit. If enlightenment or source was a 100-mile journey, tulpamancy would be like walking half a mile. I mean, it's better than nothing, and it's a good place to start a journey, since it gives you relatively quick results and shows people that you can do things outside of the ordinary. But at the same time, it's also a place people can get stuck, as there's no incentive to go any further. So most people get what they want out of it or they quit. So yeah, I think it's a good first step into spiritual practice. Okay, for anyone who dislikes the word spirituality for whatever reason, you can call it magic or practice or religion or dimensional projection or whatever you want to call it. Does it help you become a better person? Yeah, yes and no. I say yes in the sense that it helps people cope with the mental issues, but it only seems to raise them to the level of a baseline, mundane, functioning, regular person and not really go beyond that. I don't see any evidence of them becoming more virtuous or spiritually practiced or motivated in all aspects of their life. Maybe. They just sort of do mundane, regular stuff, but with a tulpa. Kind of reminds me of the furry fandom in that all their goals are just like regular stuff, such as saying they want to, go to work at Starbucks in a fursuit. They want to go to Olive Garden in a fursuit. They want to see a movie in a fursuit. It's basically all mundane, regular stuff, meaning they just want to enhance normal life. Tulpamancers seem to be doing something similar. Does it give you an appreciable skill you can master? Yes. You have to be able to visualize and focus to do it well. I mean, I guess you could trick yourself into thinking that you have one that you can't see, but in my experience, you either do it right or nothing happens. And that requires consistent effort, which in turn makes things like visualizing and concentration better. In other words, you have to do blatant spiritual practice, whether you call it that or not, in order to do it. Does it help you cope with hard times? Sort of. It definitely seems to help people deal with neuroses and mental issues, and maybe it can help them deal with loss. After all, you could theoretically make a tulpa of a deceased person or pet, but I don't think it can help with like major illnesses, stressors like war or job losses, etc. Okay, let's give it a grade. I'd say its overall score is a solid B. To use a video game analogy, if something like going through the nanas or boomies are level 99 spells, tulpamancy would be like a level 10 spell, which is something that would be helpful at the beginning of the game, but not so much later on. And the hero's journey would be the third stage of supernatural aid, but not yet crossing the threshold. I say that because tulpamancers' goals tend to be like regular mundane stuff.